Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Jamen, hanging out with my buddy Jamie Gilchrist, who's coming at us from Ohio. How you doing there, Jamie?
I'm awesome, great. Hello, America. Hello, the world.
Wonderful. All right, and welcome to you, our audience, and we look forward to your comments. So, I have some ideas I've been kicking around that I wanted to share with Jamie. So I think I'm going to do a screen share and show you some images I'm putting together. Well, before I do that, let me first give a broad overview. Excuse me. So the overview is, you know how like in the talk that we in the debate that we participated in this last week, and let me just share that real quick.
Yeah, last Tuesday.
Yeah, this last Tuesday.
Tuesday evening. Yes.
Darth Vader versus the debate team, and
right.
So I just want to give a little glimpse about what I was talking about there. So let me just share this real quick. The most urgent thing we could possibly be discussing is finding an off-ramp from this highway to hell that we're on. This is like an asteroid coming towards planet Earth, but that we're not ready or willing to see. Okay, so this is me dressed as Darth Vader. You're dressed in your full DEA raid gear. And this image that I'm presenting here, let me show that in a slightly different way. This is the image that I've got behind me. Yeah.
There we go.
And so, you know, the red arrow is this highway to hell that we're on with our entire current set of living arrangements. And so, you know, in the debate, I presented the blue arrow up above here as a possible off-ramp from this highway to hell that takes us in an entirely different direction. Ideally, if and when fully implemented, toward a whole world, towards healing the world and healing each other, and as opposed to the path of destruction that we're on. And so, and then, you know, but I've been thinking more broadly about what's really going to be required in order to save us from this highway to hell, because there is so much momentum in the direction of the red arrow, right?
No, there is.
I mean, just tremendous. And really at the root of it is this modality of life that we're in. The modality of life, let me go back to video. The modality of life that as I would describe it, is the modality of, let's see. It's a modality where, of hoarding, and that you can amass as much as you can possibly amass. There's no upper limit, you know?
Yes.
And so what that creates is a scenario where everyone is essentially building their own fiefdom,
competing,
possibly make it, you know, and not just in terms of real estate, but in terms of other kinds of assets, financial securities, et cetera, et cetera. And everyone's looking to jack up their net worth as much as they can. Now, not everyone is laser focused on this and obsessed about this. You know, a lot of people focus really on security, on living comfortably. But as long as there's a percentage of the population that's substantial, that's going for amassing more and more and more,
yes,
you know, it doesn't matter if they're rich or poor or anywhere in the middle, as long as people are trying to constantly amass and amass and amass as much as they possibly can. What that causing, you know, the environment has completely gone by the wayside, right?
No, right, exactly.
Cities and agricultural operations are just dumping their runoff, their sewage, their waste into the oceans, killing the oceans, and the oceans are our major source of through algae, right? And for, you know, sequestering carbon and generating oxygen. I mean, that's what's the basis of life. We're poisoning the oceans and we're mowing down the rainforests. And all of this, but, you know, all of this is because of this modality of life that we have, where each individual has to build their own fiefdom, large or small, and hoard, 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 hoard. So they have the resources.
It's a constant collecting. We started by collecting butterflies. Now we're collecting cars. We're collecting books. We're collecting data. We're collecting homes. It's excessive collections.
Exactly. It's hoarding, run amok with no upper limit. And the upper limit is simply the complete destruction of the biosphere. When the last mahogany tree is cut down, the last acre of virgin rainforest, that's it. It's bye-bye. So that's the upper limit. And that's the highway to hell that we're on, that we keep and we're accelerating down the path of. So really, in order to get off of the highway to hell, what's really needed is a transformation in the modality of the economy, the modality of life, right? From a life of hoarding to something else, right? I mean, imagine an ant colony. I mean, we're talking in utopian, idealistic terms. I acknowledge that. But if we don't establish a true north, how will we have any idea of where we want to begin to aim towards, right? This is
right.
This is so let's talk in utopian terms. Are you cool with that, Jamie?
Absolutely. It's completely what we should do.
Okay. And then, but just to be, realistic, once we've defined, the utopian outcome and even the utopian pathway to get there, we can say, all right, what can we focus on that will get us as close to that utopia as quickly as possible, right? But then what's realistic, what's practical. And I think is critical. Just like with the poster that I just showed, the pathway, maybe I'll flash it on again so I can walk through the steps. But the pathway of getting off of the highway to hell is a 3-stage pathway, right? A 3-stage pathway, a 3-stage exit ramp, right? So,
yeah.
The first stage is getting rid of the criminal drug cartels by repealing federal prohibition and, dissolving the United Nations Single Convention Treaty of 1962, I believe. The second stage is getting rid of all forms of organized crime. And then the third stage is pivoting that to organized crimes against Earth herself. And even though it's laid out as 3 stages, in reality, all 3 would begin to operationalize at once. But it's really the third stage where it's a total, that becomes the basis for a total transformation of our entire global economy, including our modality of life, because along with it would come the recognition that this economy of hoarding, this runaway capitalism, greed is good, is nothing less than the very foundation, the very basis of all the organized crimes that are committed against Mother Earth. In fact, that is the ultimate organized crime, is this modality of life of maximizing hoarding.
Exactly.
And doing whatever to the planet needs to be done in order to accomplish that. I mean, the scale of the oil and gas industry, given everything that we know, right? And given the oil and gas, the ability to control and rein in the oil and gas industry as exemplified by OPEC, for example, right? And our failure to rein it in, our failure to, to put a cap on it, going back to the 60s and 70s, is an absolute crime, an organized crime against Mother Earth. The unbridled expansion of the oil and gas industry is an organized crime against Mother Earth. Period. I mean, it's irrefutable, right? But until we put it in terms of crime, you're not going to see. Here's another way of looking at it. With stage 1, we get everybody riled up, and we deliver them an easy victory, a relatively easy victory of getting rid of the criminal drug cartels, starting with repealing prohibition of all drugs, and then expanded with now that we weaken them by taking out most of their financial base, we go in for the kill in phase 2 and take out all forms of organized crime. Period. right? All traditional forms of organized crime, all the mafias of the world. And then with these first two phases, we build so much social and political capital that we then go after the biggie, which is, but you see, by then we've got people unified. You see that?
They are unified, yes.
Unified humanity, right? Mexico will be a nonstop party, a celebration once they get rid of their bloody criminal drug cartels. And we'll help them with this off-ramp, right?
Yes.
So, but anyway, so this is one way of, you know, peeling off of the highway to hell that we propose. I think this is the cleanest way. And it's the most exciting, it's the most sexy, it's the most colorful. Everyone can picture it. Everyone knows what the effects of criminal drug cartels are. They're just ghastly. And so, you know, we become the heroes. We, the movement, you know, those who participate in this movement. And I invite everyone to participate in this movement. Get on board. But anyway, really, do you see how there's something more fundamental than just some politicking here? You know, we need something even more radical, and that really radical step comes here. Look, the first two are, you know, that's, you know, good solid politics and you know, criminal investigation and the kind of work that you did.
Right.
You know, that's totally within the realm of current politics. This
Yes.
way outside the realm of current politics, because current politics is, for the most part, owned and controlled by the oligarchs.
Of course.
The super rich, right? So this is the really radical one, but we need to unite humanity via the first two stages in order to take that momentum. Because the thing is, people don't follow movements; they follow leaders.
Correct.
As long as the leadership is committed to this entire trajectory, all the way to a whole world, then, you know, they can't be part of the leadership. So the leadership will take the world down this path. But here's where we get to the real radical transformation of the very modality of life on Earth. Let me go back to video sharing here. Okay. So, you know, so to bring about this radical transformation, we need to have, okay, well, we know what's not working about it, right?
For sure.
The oil and gas industry, the automotive industry, our whole modality of life of suburbs and 3-car garages and McMansions and all that. We know that doesn't work. But it's nonetheless a byproduct of something more fundamental, which is the modality of life of maximized hoarding. Greed is good. So let's first identify, you know, what is kind of an ideal that we want to strive for, right? What is the ideal? Let's get idealistic about it, and then we can have the conversation. Okay, how might we get there? What pathway might we take, and what stages might that pathway consist of? Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's another great thing about the off-ramp that we show. It's got 3 really clean stages, right? Like rocket boosters, right? You start by stamping out the criminal drug cartels, and right out the gate, you've got the world's attention, right? You're Robin Hood to the world at that point, right? You took out the bad guys, and you helped everyone, right? With that, we unite the world, and we're on our way. So, so no matter how crazy the utopian destination, there's got to be a path to get there, right? As long as fundamentally the world's going to be way better off, right, with that utopian destination. So if maximizing hoarding is not the modality we want, what is the modality we want? And I've got some definite thoughts on that, but let me shut up for a minute, because I'm sure you've got some thoughts as well.
Well, I do, but you're on a roll. The maximizing the hoarding is a symptom of, you know, keeping up with the Joneses and everyone trying to purchase happiness. And I would submit that happiness cannot be purchased. Now, the more money people get and the more a mass of quantity of things they get, whether it's a person that's poor and they're hoarding cats in a trailer because that makes them happy, or a person is rich and they're putting cars in space. It makes no difference. We are all seeking happiness in hopes of enlightenment. And I think that we could reconsider that approach and demonetize it and seek enlightenment through being happy with less. And if we can be happy with less, then Mother Earth provides all that we need. And we just have to change our it's not an easy task. What I'm going to say is not an easy task. Our monetization of everything in pursuit of happiness to the demonetization of things to get to happiness. You know, a walk in the park costs no money. It does cost money to create a park, but outside is free. And people can be happy. There are people in prison on death row that are happy because they found a way to choose that path. And if they can find that, and Gandhi can find that, and Warren Buffett can say, let me give away as much money as I can because the money doesn't make me happy, the helping makes me happy. That's what we have to gravitate towards and capitalize on, the collecting of choosing happiness as the goal, not as the path. We don't want to be happy along the way in a Lamborghini. We want to be happy before the Lamborghini's built. So it's ultimately complicated, and I'm not pretending to have the answer, but everyone is hoarding to achieve happiness, and everyone that's hoarding isn't happy.
Very well said. Definitely. All righty. So I want to talk about kind of my ideas about a utopian modality of life where there's a lot more sharing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, a park belongs to everyone, so everyone can go out and walk in and enjoy the park. You don't have to own, you know, 500 acres of beautiful land that's just for you and your family and your guests. So very much with that in mind, you know, I think in terms of, you know, what would be kind of the utopia. And the first comment I want to make is that there are a lot of examples in from history of, you know, utopian ideals being the basis for some new form of governance and government to enforce it, and mode of production of the economy, notably communism, lots of different flavors of communism. And, you know, for example, and I'll just do a screen share here. One form of kind of utopian communism that was attempted and really ran amok. Well, let's see here.
Honey, I'm in the middle of this.
I beg your pardon?
No, go ahead.
Well, you know, so one example of a utopian goal for society run amok was Cambodia under Pol Pot.
Yeah, Pol Pot, exactly.
Where it was, you know, they were trying to do this utopian agrarian thing where they literally made cities illegal. They just drove everyone out of the cities into the countryside, and it became slave labor because it was all dictated from the top. You have to do exactly what we say, and without cities, the country lost its nerve center. It's lost its brain. It lost that vital function of moderating the economy. And so what ended up, and the results are the results, with millions dead and so many others just starving, and just terrible, terrible impact on the country. So all right, so if not that, what what do we want, right? But the first thing I want to point out, can you see that drawing there on the screen?
Yep, sure can.
Is the current modality of life. I equate it to basically all of us are locked into this van, not just us humans, but also Mother Earth herself. And the van is going down this highway to hell, right? That is the highway to hell. And it's leading us over the edge of the cliff. And down below the edge of the cliff is the lake of fire, or whatever awaits us as we catapult down. So,
right.
And inside the van, rather than having constructive conversations about how we change course, basically inside the van, we're fighting, right? The people inside the van are fighting. And, they're fighting for a window seat. They're fighting for more seat space. They're fighting for whatever food is there. But the whole van, including all the people, including Mother Earth herself, we're all going over the cliff. So that's why it's so darn urgent that we figure out another modality. So I just started, making a little list of a couple of examples under, one extreme modality is laissez-faire capitalism. Let's look at the extremes, right? And the United States is not too far from that extreme. Hong Kong takes it even a few notches further. Singapore is another notable example. These are different flavors of capitalism. And then likewise with communism, we've got different flavors from history. And then everything from Swedish style, capitalist, socialist mix to whatever, right? But currently what predominates in the global economy is what I call a global neo-capitalist system. This is my words. I don't even know what the academics are calling it. But basically what I'm talking about is state-supported and state-insured economy by the oligarchs for the oligarchs, where it's state-supported and even state-funded. Think too big to fail. That's state-insured, state-funded. By default, I mean, they didn't buy the insurance. They didn't pay for it.
Correct.
Right? They just got bailed out. So it's economy by the oligarchs for the oligarchs. The rich get massively richer, the poor get poor. It's that simple.
Well, it happens over and over. We can talk about, the obvious, a GM a few years ago, and then instead of fast forward, back forward 30 years, the Chrysler bailout. It just continues to happen. And when it happens, the government drains its resources, doesn't deal with the debt, doesn't deal with the needs of the poorest, and assists the largest, most productive organizations inside this country to reboot themselves yet again to provide products to the masses that most of the masses can barely afford.
Yeah. So, yep. So anyway, it's crushing the poor and enriching the rich financially. So as an alternative to all that, what do I envision, right? What I envision is a utopian scenario where up in the sky you see this cloud, think cloud computing, but it's radical collective intelligence that's in the cloud, which includes artificial intelligence. GHM here stands for global holistic modeling. So we max out on computational and artificial intelligence power, but the real power, at least as currently envisioned in radical collective intelligence, is with the collective intelligence of the people who participate. And so anyway, that's we've got whole videos just on that topic on my YouTube channel, same channel as I'm publishing this one on. So I won't delve into that too much, other than to make the point that it properly architected and properly populated with people, with participants, and we're pioneering these very concepts on radish.org, which we're within a couple few weeks of launching. But by whatever form, I don't care who does it, we humanity need to come together and instigate this radical collective intelligence so that we can figure out exactly what we need to do as humanity and exactly what we need to use our economy for. And I've got some, details down here that I'll just highlight, So every factory in the economy, what should it be producing, right? Everything that's produced, where should it go? It's what I'm talking about sounds like a planned economy. And when you say planned economy, you think of the dramatic failures of the Soviet Union and others. Cambodia under Pol Pot is another good example. Excuse me. These dramatic failures happened in the past because they lacked intelligence, simply because they lacked intelligence. They didn't have the information. They didn't have the processing power. They didn't have the creative power to figure out what needed to happen. Instead, you had, a bunch of corrupt administrators making decisions, largely for their own profit or for their own power.
And they were based on one or two or three ideas that were then stretched out over years instead of the collective intelligence of hundreds of thousands of ideas, so the cream could rise to the top. They didn't allow the cream to rise to the top. They said, here's the plan, and everyone bought in, regardless.
Yeah, regardless of how impractical or whatever. Anyway, but the radical collective intelligence, the idea is that it dynamically orchestrate the global economy. And, that means coming up with a utopian plan, which includes the sharing of resources among individuals, among organizations, and the optimal application of our resources so that we can save whatever can be saved from this current scenario where we're headed off over the cliff, right? And, it's a very in many ways, an extremely bleak scenario, the one that we're looking at. But at the same time, it finally offers us with the urgency that we've needed to finally come together in a radically new way and take control of this cancer called humanity and finally use it in positive ways rather than just let it run amok on its own under the directive, hoard as much as you can, and destroy whatever you need to destroy in the process. Because if it's you or them, save your life and screw them, right? So everyone's been screwing each other and the planet in order to try to save their own ass. And then that, for those who start hoarding significant amounts, it becomes enrich your own ass as much as you can possibly enrich it. And then you get to these obscene extremes like Bill Gates, et cetera, et cetera. And so in this new modality, now this is the utopian extreme that we want to get toward. And I think it's worth, talking about this. It's worth exploring what this might look like. But among other things, I think some of the notable factors, some of the notable things that we notice popping out of it that I predict would pop out of it, and I could be totally wrong in my predictions, but one would be applications of geoshading and particularly refreezing the Arctic. Basically, the melting of Arctic ice needs to be treated as an emergency, like a gigantic oil spill. We need to be on that like yesterday, right?
Right.
As commanded by the presidents of all nations, to their own private sectors, to their own militaries, to their own coast guards, to their own, you name it, commandeer and and then pay them, right? Print up a bunch of debt. It's not like we haven't done that before. So print up a buttload of debt and just treat it like an emergency Marshall Plan. And analogies are escaping me, but treat it like a military emergency, for crying out loud.
It's a 9/11.
Yeah, it's a 9/11. It's a 9/11.
It's instead of America's 9/11, this is an Earth 9/11.
Earth 9/11. That's right. In fact, maybe that should be what we call this series, Earth 9/11 or something like that. But we'll figure that out, and suggestions are welcome. But anyway, these are two of the notable things: geoshading, refreezing the Arctic, building arcologies next to nuclear power plants.
It was so important.
With the aim of shutting them down. Especially even if we go Mad Max. In other words, the arcologies are basically designed to shut down nuclear, even if we go Mad Max, right? So they're built and designed and stocked with everything they need, from food and water to tools and equipment, generators, you name it. And they're co-located next to the nuclear power plants.
Right.
Shut them down. Because going Mad Max is just a real possibility at this point. That's how close we are to the edge of the cliff because of abrupt climate change, destruction of the biosphere, poisoning, etc., overpopulation, overhoarding, etc., etc. So another is arcologies for the purpose of saving. I'll just call it saving and shepherding life, right?
Right.
Starting with the hardiest life forms, plant, insect, fungi, yeast. I don't know what the heck. I'm not a biologist, but starting with the hardiest that are most likely to succeed. Let's make sure that we don't screw them up, right? And so we shepherd them to wherever they're most likely to thrive in the hotter world that we're quickly heading towards. Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm also saying invest in geoshading. Let's see if we can keep the world cool. However man intervened, with refreezing the Arctic, for example, that's a critical part. I mean, that's just a no-brainer, because we need that reflective mirror that is the Arctic ice to reflect sunlight away, especially in the summertime. When the sun is just beating down on it, reflect it back to space, so that we don't really drive the runaway train into hyperdrive of heating. So anyway, I'm not entirely giving up on cooling the planet and keeping her cool, but we also need to, like a good insurance policy and like a good fire department, we need to be ready, and that's why we have arcologies, to be ready for the worst, prepare for the worst. In the grand scheme of things of government spending, they're not going to cost that much money to achieve these first two goals, right? Now, a third goal that a lot of people are going to be screaming for is arcologies for saving human life, right?
Yes.
And what I have to say to that is that we first prioritize the nuclear one. Because the arcologies for shutting down nuclear will include, substantial quantities of humanity, armies of people, specialists, technicians, engineers, et cetera, construction folks. Armies of folks are going to be needed to do that. And if we don't shut down nuclear, you can pretty much kiss life on Earth goodbye, because as civilization collapses, the nuclear power plants are all going to go Fukushima at once. Pretty much we're within a tight time frame, producing enough radiation to fry the atmosphere and just utterly destroy life on Earth and destroy the possibility of life on Earth. That's
exactly. The possibility, right?
That's it. And so that's why that's number one. And then close behind are the arcologies for saving and shepherding life on Earth, right? Because without life, there will be no life. So, it doesn't really, so only if we get those two bases covered, does it make sense to really build, high volume arcologies for saving human life. And one of the interesting things about this is that this third class of arcologies could actually generate massive funding to actually fund the other two, saving life and shutting down nuclear. Right. So anyway, these are among just the burning hot priorities that we have in transforming our modality of life on Earth. Now, one of the exciting things is that we can actually get to addressing some of these super hot priority items without necessarily transforming the entire global economy, right?
Right.
As Guy McPherson and others are quick to point out, if we suddenly shut down all of industrial civilization, right, and stop belching out all this smoke into the atmosphere, right, we lose the reflectivity that those particles, particularly sulfates and the water vapor, that the water droplets that form around them, what the reflectivity that those particles give us in terms of reflecting away such a substantial portion of sunlight, that if you suddenly shut down all these emitters of particulates, smoke basically, that we would see within a matter of weeks a jump in global average temperature of at least 2.5 degrees C for recent estimates, which we simply cannot afford. So as we orchestrate the global economy, you're going to see some, really interesting things being preserved in some cases temporarily, while we institute other forms of geoshading that aren't quite so polluting and harmful in the long run, right? So there's a lot of delicate balancing acts that are going to need to be struck. And but the point I was making is that we don't have to just completely shut down and transform everything overnight. It's not all or nothing. Even if we get partway there, and let me just kind of show an example of a system designed to get us partway there, transforming the economy through a new standard, CCC, for a compassionate economy, that would send all of its profits initially towards eradicating hunger, and that's partly to unite humanity in the very short term, along with getting rid of drug cartels. Out with the bad, in with the good. In with the good includes feeding everyone. Socially transformational and ecologically regenerative. So a lot of their funding, once we end hunger, we'll end hunger very quickly once we get enough, a substantial enough portion of even 1% of the global economy, its profits, the profits of 1% of the global economy, profits would be enough to end hunger. So as soon as we end hunger, we direct the fire hose of profit generation of this new model. There's community cafes that we use to end hunger. Here's one we piloted in Southern California. But the model, once we wipe out hunger, the rest of those net profits go towards healing Mother Earth. And certain industries will spring up, like the hemp industry, as pioneered by my brother Takuya Sato of Sato Hemp in Japan. They're the first CCC company, donating all profits to ending hunger. Here we are with the Satos. This is a radish Sato summit at the base of Mount Fuji. There I am next to the Emperor. Anyway, but then the rest of this presentation goes off on collective intelligence and all kinds of cool stuff like that. But let me get back to video because a little bit too techno here. But the bottom line point that I'm making with all that is, even if we start to shift part of the economy organically through new standards like CCC, right, and through movements like getting rid of the criminal drug cartels, the whole anti-crime movement, that whole off-ramp, right, as well as just the collective intelligence that congeals around the imperative of saving life on Earth, human and otherwise. As things heat up, particularly as we get into summer and things just get crazier and crazier, there's going to be this hunger for solutions. So I think we will be able to build a substantial movement. Getting rid of the criminal drug cartels is such a no-brainer. I think we'll nail that one pretty quickly in political time. And so I really think we've got a shot. See, and then once we start generating the funding mechanisms through commandeering parts of the global economy through standards and movements, such as what we're talking about, we'll be able to generate the funding.
Right. That's the magic piece.
But instead of being led by the private sector, it's led by the compassionate sector.
It's beyond the compassionate sector. It's by the agreed upon goal to turn it around. And you know, we talk about the silent majority, but the true silent majority, the most true of all, free of politics, is the silent majority that wish things were better and safer and purer for ourselves and our future. That's the group we want, and that's who we're talking to.
Absolutely. What you described, for me, that describes the feminine, the divine feminine, motherhood.
Yes.
And so I really see the women as and if it weren't for my queen, I wouldn't be on this path with anywhere near the power that I am. We need our women to direct us.
This is a women-centric movement. Women, Mother Earth, non-gathering, non-hoarding, family-based love, because we need the entire planet to choose family-based love, and that is driven and managed by females, by women like Mother Earth.
That's it. And so let's all come together, women and men, and let's all work together to come up with all of the envisioning, all of the recharacterization, reframing, re-architecting of the entire modality of life on Earth, and crucially, the pathway to get us there. What's the pathway? What are the stages in the pathway? Criminal drug cartels, fine. Transforming the mode of production of the economy, fine. The urgency and imperative of refreezing the Arctic, finally coming to terms with all the damage that we're causing. Let's come together and use our collective intelligence to figure out all these parts, all these aspects, right? And I know sometimes we attract some naysayers and saying, well, you can't do that. Oh, you can't shut down a nuclear power plant in less than half a century. How do you know? I mean, come on. Under the methodologies designed back in the 1960s, maybe, but if we really apply our collective intelligence, our radical collective intelligence, including artificial intelligence, we can definitely get that number down. And if it takes 10 years, fine, it takes 10 years. Let's build the arcology and stock it and supply it and including supplying it with people so that we can do this 10-year project of shutting the darn thing down and storing all the toxic nuclear waste and raw materials safely, whatever it takes, right? Let's do it. Let's get it on. In addition to building the arcologies, let's build the concrete containment pits, the massive concrete containment pits right next to each nuclear power plant. Because in a Mad Max world, we may not be able to depend upon rail or trucking to move stuff around. So let's build the pits, let's build the arcologies, let's brace ourselves and prepare. And this is just the beginning. What we're talking about is just the beginning. What's possible, what's at stake here is radically transforming life on Earth for the better across myriad dimensions, right? We're just hitting on some real hot buttons like nuclear and like, saving life form, through arcologies, etc. But there's myriad other things that just beckon to be transformed. What we're talking about is really a holistic transformation of life on Earth. Call it a revolution if you wish, but it's a revolution of compassion. It's a nonviolent revolution. And it's a revolution of radical collective intelligence. So one thing's for sure, if we don't dream it, it'll never happen. So let's start dreaming and envisioning as among our first steps. And let's complete the process of building out the platform for radical collective intelligence. Volunteers needed, experts needed. Just reach out to me, Jamen at radish.org, and let's get it on. What are we waiting for? What else is more pressing for us to do? Oh, let's do more hoarding. Well, here's the thing. This takes for granted all this transformation that we need to accomplish, this re-envisioning. Let me screen share again. This whole radical re-envisioning, redesign, and all that has to happen while we are inside the van.
Right.
Barreling towards the edge of the cliff, and to a large degree enchained by the current modality of life. That's our ball and chain. We're chained to it. We're imprisoned by it to a large degree, right? The current economy by the oligarchs, for the oligarchs, state-supported, state-funded, it really has us enslaved. And so we need to come up with this new modality, this radically new modality, while we are largely enslaved and enchained by the current modality. That's just a reality. Let's deal with it. The slaves in the South who broke free and created the Underground Railroad to freedom, they did it while they were enslaved. We can do it while we're enslaved. So
we do it in spite of the enslavement.
Exactly. We do it in spite of the enslavement. And but we acknowledge that we're still, part of the current system. We're still afraid, we're still financially insecure.
Yes, of course.
And we've got to nonetheless carve out some time every week to participate in this project or a similar project.
No, that's exactly right. We've got to make the time. We've got to do it. And while our bodies are enslaved, akin to the Africans that were physically enslaved, no one ever enslaved their spirit. And we're going to release the spirit to become free of the body that's holding us back.
Yep. That's right. So come join us, submit your comments, join radish.org as soon as it's ready. And but hit us up with your comments and questions in the meantime.
Please do. We need your input. Everyone watching, anyone watching, if one person is watching, one person besides Jamen and me, please give us your input, no matter what it is. There's only one way to move forward, and that's by moving forward.
Right. And also, I want to invite people for the next time we get together in the next, few days. Why don't we make it like an open invite thing, so people can just jump in. And, I think you can have maximum 10 people on a Google Hangout. But let's think about, kind of scheduling some of these so people can just jump in. And then once we have way more demand than we have spaces for, 10 on a given Hangout, then that's the time to start branching off into parallel conversations. Some focused on nuclear, some focused on saving life, some focused on transforming the mode of production of the global economy, some focused on transforming the modality of life on Earth, and all this stuff, right? We need parallel conversations and all this. We need conversations on how to refreeze the freaking Arctic.
Yeah.
You think there's a manual on that? We need to write the manual. We need to use our collective intelligence and figure this out. And once we've written the manual for it, then we can sell it to folks and get funding for it.
Agreed.
But we got to get started. So join us, join the conversation, join the revolution of compassion, and let's get it on.
Okay, I'm 100% in, and I'm going to ask everybody out there, just give this a try. There's nothing to lose.
And please post this video on your Facebook page.
Cross post. Do it. Twitter, cross post, Dropbox, Snapchat. Send it out to everybody.
Instagram. Exactly.
Right.
Let's get it out there. And because we got to build this movement so freaking fast. The world is falling apart in so many ways. So let's do this. What else are we going to do?
That's right.
Watch it go down. Look, the ones of y'all who want to sit back and watch it go down, that's your choice. And we're not going to try to spend our time talking you out of it. But if you have the slightest inkling that we might be able to do something positive in the days that remain, join us and let's do that. Let's do the best we can for Mother Earth, for life on Earth.
I agree, Jamen. Awesome. I'm ready to sign off.
All righty.
And then Jamen, we'll talk after this.
Very good. Just hang in with me a quick second, Jamie, while I thank everyone, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much, everyone.